The Porsche 911 has now been in production for 57 years. Even in the 60s, the engineers knew what they wanted their iteration of a sports car to look like: a coupe with a flat six engine slung out over the rear axle. And this philosophy has endured over the decades. In 2017, Porsche celebrated the production of their millionth 911, making it one of the world's most recognisable motor vehicles. But here's the problem, and murder me in the comments section if you so desire, but I'm just saying it as it is. I've never been much of a Porsche 911 enthusiast. I've always preferred British and Italian sports cars, where the stuff from Stuttgart for some reasons always left me feeling a little bit cold. So perhaps the ultimate test of the new 992 is whether it can make a Porsche 911 fan out of me. And from the outset, there's plenty to warm the heart. The Carrera 4S currently represents the top of the 911 range. Later this year, Turbo and Turbo S models will probably be unveiled, and no doubt the crazy people over in the RS department will be getting their hands on it as well. But for the moment, the Carrera 4S is the fastest 992 money can buy. And you know what? Speed isn't something that this car lacks. I've always found that the Carrera 4S represents an interesting spot in the 911 range. It's not quite fast enough to be considered a supercar, but it's comfortably faster than your average sports car. This not inconsiderable amount of performance comes courtesy of a twin-turbo 3-litre flat 6, which produces 444 brake horsepower and 390 foot-pounds of torque. Of course, there are no prizes for guessing where the engine is. Power is sent to all four wheels via an 8-speed PDK, meaning the Carrera 4S now sprints to 62 miles an hour in 3.6 seconds and tops out at 190 miles an hour. Our test car comes with the Sport Chrono Pack, which gives you this drive mode selector here on the steering wheel, and a Sport Plus mode with launch control. And here's the thing, sometimes launching performance cars can be far more complicated than it actually needs to be. Anybody who's recently driven a McLaren will know what I'm talking about. But in a Porsche 911, it's super simple. So you come to a stop, you put your left foot on the brake, you put the car into Sport Plus, you select drive, you mash the throttle, and go! Alright, okay. With the Sport Chrono Pack, the 0 to 62 time in the C4S comes down to a supercar baiting 3.4 seconds. It doesn't feel Audi R8 V10 fast, but you know what? This is more performance than anybody would need on the public road. And what about when you show the 911 a country road like this one? Oh, a bit of bite back there. Oh, finally some playfulness. Well, first of all, the traction as you come out of corners is excellent. Obviously it's a C4S, it's four-wheel drive, and so it just lays the power down and goes. And then there's that fabulous flat six engine, which really is the hallmark of or one of the hallmarks of a Porsche 911, slung over the rear axle. Listen to that, it sounds absolutely glorious. And you know what, even though it's now turbocharged, I can't feel any lag in this delivery whatsoever, and it runs out to the rev limiter. The engine's really strong, and of course it's mated to this 8-speed PDK gearbox. It's not Ferrari snappy, and you know what, the SSG and the McLaren still has I think the legs on it, but you know what, it's a super responsive gearbox. You put a paddle and bang, you've got another gear. And also Porsche 911s, the 992 will be available with a manual later on this year, so that'll be another one for the enthusiasts to enjoy. Other things to mention, well, the steering's lovely. I really think Porsche have now nailed the EPAS system. I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of feel and feedback through the wheel, but you know what, it's got a really lovely weight to it. It allows you to place the car nicely on the road, and you always have this sense of where the front wheels are. Which brings me on to the agility. Despite wider use of aluminium, the 992 is slightly heavier than the 991 that came before it. Nevertheless, it's still faithful to your inputs, and Porsche Active Suspension Management, or PASM for short, lends the C4S a suppleness to help it best exploit your favourite B-road. The brakes are good too. Our test car may only be running steel discs, but Porsche claim that their cars decelerate in half the time it takes them to accelerate to 62 miles an hour. So, in the case of our 911 test car, around 1.7 seconds. Of course, all of this sounds fantastic, but the top spec Carrera is supposed to be the most usable model in the range, so what's it like day to day? The Carrera 4S starts from about £98,000, and well, this test car we have here is £116,000. So for that money you would want quite a nice cabin, and well, there's good news. The Porsche 911 comes with a really lovely interior. First of all, the quality of the materials in here, excellent. Lots of leather, aluminium, very nicely finished indeed. This truffle brown leather is, let's say, dividing opinion currently on our Instagram poll, but I actually like it. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I don't mind it at all. Next of all, well, the infotainment, the way everything's housed, the touchscreen, it all works beautifully, and it's just generally a really lovely place to be. We've got these sports seats which are super comfortable, really hug you and support you in all the right places, and the driving position's great as well. It's nice and low, the visibility all round is excellent. So yeah, as a place to sort of cover distance in, the Porsche 911, I don't know, it's got a real nice GT car vibe actually, this Carrera 4S. I quite like it. Oh, and also the Burmester Hi-Fi, which is I think a £3,200 option, sounds wicked, really very good. And overall, just the refinement, the on-road manners when you're not driving it like a knob. Yeah, it's just a super comfortable car. The MPH levels are low. You do pick out a little bit of road noise, but it's not too much. Wind noise is fairly minimal. So yeah, like I said, just a really lovely place to cover some solid miles from. So far so good then for the latest Porsche 911 Carrera 4S. But what about the question I posed earlier that serves as the premise for this review? So I should conclude, shouldn't I? Well, let's return to the question that I asked at the beginning of the review. Can this new 992 make a Porsche 911 fan out of me? Well, there's two answers. There's a yes and there's a no. Let's start with the yes. First of all, I really respect this as a sports car. I think it's fantastic, drives really well, the engine is amazing. You couldn't tell that this thing's turbocharged, and it sounds awesome as well. This flat six, beautiful. And dynamically it's just a great package, but it can be refined as well. And I think if you're in the market for a sports car, you have to go down to your local Porsche dealership and just check one of these out. But that leads me into the second part as to the reason no. In its current state as a Carrera 4S, I just think it's a little bit too grown up. 911s used to have a history of being a little bit edgy, and well, it's just not an edgy car at all. It's almost a little bit too easy to drive. And I think the GT cars, when they come along, will be the enthusiast's choice. I think arguably as well, not even a full GT car, but something a little bit lighter with a manual gearbox. And thankfully, Porsche will be offering a manual gearbox with the 911 a little bit later on this year. And I can't wait to drive those cars, because that's when I think the real enthusiasm for the 911 and for the experience and for the brand will really come out. So for the moment, I think it's a fantastic sports car, but I can't wait to drive a different variant so that I can explore what the 911 is really about in a little bit more detail.